Hello? Hello? 30 apa? 30, 35 apa? Itu channel sama 35? 35 satu. Okay. Very good evening to you all. I would request the admin to please tell me whether my audio is very clear.
You are now unmuted.
Clear?
You are now
okay.
muted.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm happy that now I'm in a web platform, the Vetzone, which is an online lecture series organized by the IBA Trivandrum, Kerala. So I'm really happy to be a part of it. And the topic given to me for this particular lecture is diagnostic autopsy with special reference to veterolegal cases. As I can see in the list of participants, many of the people are field practitioners, and probably the one thing which you don't like in a field practice would be an autopsy, because primarily when you start the practice in the early morning, you don't expect something to die. Always you try to save animals. You'll always wait to God that will let you be successful in your treatment, but you don't know what is going to happen the very next moment, because diseases are such that you don't have any control about the disease. Sometimes it can aggravate suddenly. In spite of the best treatment given by you, animals may succumb. So definitely you are then forced to do an autopsy. In that case, you will be doing an autopsy, which you refer it as a diagnostic autopsy or a clinical autopsy. So people used to ask me why you do an autopsy. So already the animal is dead. So the exact answer to that is the footer, what I've given in this title slide, that is mortui vivos docent. It's a Latin word. We're all vets. When we studied our undergraduate pathology classes, We used to remember our teachers telling us the death teaches the living. To be very frank, the death has taught me a lot because since 1997, working with an institute, that is a state referral institute, I've got the opportunity to do a lot of autopsies in the field along with the team, in the field and also in my laboratory, wherein I could understand many things, and that is the power which had given me the push or the motivation to take a lecture on diagnostic pathology. So with that particular note, let me go to the next slide. So pathology is something which I love to talk about for hours together, but I'm now restraining myself to one particular aspect of pathology, that is the autopsy. Because you know the rest of the things what has been listed down in this second slide is all again related to pathology. We will be talking. So I hope there are a lot of pathologists in this particular forum who are attending this online session. So basically now we'll talk only about autopsy. So autopsy is nothing but it's an examination of a body of a dead person or an animal. In the human context, we call it as a corpse or a cadaver, whereas in an animal context, we call it as a carcass. And why you do that autopsy? Because already we have discussed, you are doing autopsies of very many reasons, and we'll be discussing that in the future slides. First of all, you should determine the cause of death. Because I'm not telling that your treatment is not that good enough. That is why the death has occurred. It may not be true all the time because there will be concomitant infections. You don't know what has happened. The pathogenesis may be too intricate to be known from the clinical signs. So for determining the cause of death and also as a legal requirement for certain cases where a malicious intent is suspected, you will have to go for a forensic autopsy. And even for students, they are also doing autopsy. They sacrifice animals as a part of their experimental work, and they do the autopsy and no deletions. So basically, there are some terms which you use interchangeably. Necropsy is another term for that. Necropsy will be done on an animal carcass, whereas an autopsy normally is performed in a human body. And post-mortem dissection, post-mortem examination, post-mortem as such, without the latter part as examination, we just tell it as post-mortem alone. But we understand what all these words mean. So the reasons for conducting again an autopsy would be the identification of the cause of the disease. You need to identify what is the pathogen involved. All the time, your microbiological assays may not really tell you, even in the clinical phase. But ultimately, when the terminal event has occurred, that means when the death has occurred, there is nothing to go beyond because already it has culminated in an event like death. So you have to find something on that. And why do you do that? Already the animal is dead. But mind you, we all know that it's not like humans. And I would always tell that, veterinary doctors do more autopsies than humans. Human, why do you do an autopsy? Only if there is a mysterious death or there is some case or some mutation pertaining to that particular death, people do an autopsy. Otherwise, people don't normally go for an autopsy. But in our case, we are compelled to do autopsies for one of many things now. If you want an insurance claim, that should be supported by an autopsy report. So all these things are there in a veterinary practice. So if you have a herd of 100 animals, and people never rear animals as still or to the place. Now it's again commercial enterprise. People have dairy farms of 5s, 10s, or even hundreds. So 100 animals in a herd, or a flock of around 60, 80 birds, or 100 birds, and you're finding some 10 birds dead, or some 10 animals dying, or on different clinical stages of the disease, probably. You can, with the autopsy you perform the dead animal, you can give some leads to where you can rectify and prevent future losses. And moreover, the pathogenesis of the disease would be really understandable when you do a post-mortem, because you just won't be able to know when the clinical phase was happening, because your differential diagnosis may not work well, because there are a lot of diseases with the same similar symptoms, and probably you get misled. Start with one treatment regimen, probably that may not work for that particular disease. So finally, when you go for the post-mortem, you'll be able to understand what has really happened in that particular animal. So, place of necropsy, this is something I know. This is something what differs from a human autopsy. In human autopsies, what happens is you have a morgue or a mortuary wherein you do the autopsy. You have a specific room for that with all that lighting and all this paraphernalia to do a proper autopsy. But in our case, in our veterinary practice, we don't have any good place to do an autopsy. Even we don't get a good place to treat sometimes. So they just leave alone autopsy. Anyway, for an autopsy, you need a good place which should be free from human habitation. It should be free. It should be away from feed storage areas, and also people who are, or that it should be away from sanitary wells. Suppose if you go to dig a grave and bury the remains of the carcass, you should be choosing a place which is away from the sanitary wells, which can contaminate the sanitary wells, and the area after necropsy or the post-mortem should be thoroughly disinfected, because there can be a hazard lurking which can cause a human illness later. And preferably, you need to select a place which is motorable, because you have to move up to the post-mortem site, or sometimes you'd have to bring that animal or the carcass to that particular site for autopsies. And we have seen in our institute, when we go for autopsies, like elephant autopsies in the field, it's not that possible to haul an elephant using a crane and shift it to some other place for an autopsy. So in that case, what we do is we use that place itself. We try to clear up the area around, and we do the post-mortem in that particular place. And see to it that you are disinfecting that place before you leave. That is again the duty of the person who is conducting that autopsy. And before you start the autopsy, I would give you some certain tips. And probably on all our working people and all should be doing a lot of autopsies in the field, and some may be working in laboratories even. But my experience, because I've been working for a pretty long period of time, particularly being a pathologist, I is working mostly with carcasses all the time. And of course, clinical pathology evaluation and other things also be a part of my work in the laboratory. So it is better if you have a brief clinical history of the case. That really supports your autopsy. Because if you have an illness of the respiratory system or the GI system, if you have a diarrheic illness, or if you have a respiratory sign like a chronic obstructive disease, pulmonary disease, something of that sort, definitely you will be able to focus on those areas or those organ systems which is likely to give you more lesions. But at the same time, I caution you not to be prejudiced with that clinical history, because if you're searching for one thing in one particular place, you may miss many other things which are very valuable for your final report. And it's better to have an idea about the breed, the species, and the most important thing would be the IT marks. You identify the animal first before you start the postmortem or the autopsy. Because be sure that you are performing autopsy on an animal which is already dead, and not on an animal which is live as per the records. Because there have been instances wherein people have been doing postmortems, the tag has been tampered, and finally insurance claim, the insurance companies, they reject the claim just because the identification is something not really clear. So we have to be very sure that which animal you are doing the autopsy, and also the sex. Sometimes, the system, what you neglect the most would be the genital system. Unless and until if you have some real good signs or some indications to do some exploring on that. Normally, you just ignore that system, and finally it comes to a point that you will be just concentrating on the thorax, the thoracic organs and the abdominal organs, and to leave the rest of the part you normally ignore. And finally, when you write the report, you're not sure whether the sex was a female or a male. These things also can happen. And autolysis, putrefaction, rigor mortis, wounds, discharges, exudates, and all these form a part of your observation, because that should be there. And your clinico-pathological evaluation should also be a part of your autopsy examination. Because you can collect a lot of tissues, because it's not your simple observation of the gross lesions which can give you a diagnosis. Probably you have to collect a lot of materials or specimens, clinical specimens from the carcass, and send it to different laboratory divisions, which will aid you in a correct or a conclusive diagnosis. Necropsy kit, as you all know, is a big, like a buffet spread. In a 5-star hotel, you get a lot of instruments. You have a small animal post-mortem kit, necropsy kit. You also have a big kit for the large animals. It's not the size of the kit that matters; it's the size of the instruments you hold. For a large animal, a small animal, here there you can see all sorts of a pruning knife, your bone cutters, your bone shears, your small narrow scissors, the bigger ones, then your Alice forceps, your thumb forceps, your bone drills, and your secateurs. I don't think I find a secateur here because secateurs are nothing but small plier type of things which you can use for ripping open the xiphoid and opening the thorax. So I think that's not there in this particular kit. But anyway, see to it that you have sufficient instruments, sharp and blunt, and also containers in your kit to collect the samples for further diagnosis. So your checklist, you should be having a checklist. Your preparedness is very important. Just like as you go for a case, you start with an you embark on a disease investigation, or you embark on a treatment. Some medicines in hand. You have this. Just like that, when you go to a necropsy, once you are in a necropsy field, you don't have time to go to your hospital or your premises to take what is really needed. So instead, you prepare a checklist well in advance and see to it that all things are there in your kit before you start. You should be having a post-mortem set for the large animal and small animal separately. You can wash it and clean it. If it is a steel and steel knife and all, probably you can clean it and keep it. And the second thing is the most important thing, which I would like, even if I'm deprived of a glove or an apron, I would love to have a camera with me all the time, because that gives me the proof of not only what I'm doing, but again, the lesions, what you observe crossing. Because another time, a few hours later, probably I'll be held up with something else, or probably I'll be doing another autopsy in the laboratory, and I don't have any clue of what has been done in the first autopsy. For that, it's better to have a store of all these items in your camera. If you don't have a camera with your digital camera, if you have a good iPhone or some sort of a good mobile camera, that will also work. And see to it that your gallery is not full and you have a full storage space with a SD card. And polypropylene white mouth bottles should be there for your specimen collection, which again, you should not be telling the farmer or the person around to buy a small container from the local shop, which may not be available at that time. And what you used to do it, probably you'll be taking a long arm, that OG gloves, and just tying it in one side before and after putting this tissue inside, which is a very wrong practice and doesn't seem scientific and doesn't seem good for a professional to do like this. People are watching when you're doing the post-mortem, and this sort of activity should definitely be discouraged. If your juniors are doing, please tell them not to do in such a way. And your slides and vacutated tubes are very important, because you have to take some impression smears. You need to have some slides, grease-free slides, and that should be there in your kit. Should be having vacutated tubes for all this collection of hard blood. If you want to collect, probably you can have a couple of tubes, and trays and SS bowls, probably SS bowls and trays for handling or things what you are going for when you're going for this autopsy. Plastic buckets and mugs for again holding water to pour onto the contaminated surfaces. Formalin, salt, ice, and methanol would be the best preservatives for tissue. Then if it's for forensic autopsy, use a salt, and if it's for a PCR or a DNA base or a molecular diagnosis, you can use ice, or methanol can be used for blood fixation. And all these things should be there. Cotton thread and measuring tape. Not that all carcasses are measured all the time, but morphometry is very important, particularly in cases of wildlife autopsies. You should be measuring the girth of the animal, the length, and the height of the animal from the withers. And all these measurements should be noted down in your report when you finally give the report, and that is an important part. And writing pad, labels, marker pen. Of course, you will be having your own pen, like a hero pen or some other jotter pen in your pocket, which will not be able to write in a label. Probably the labels, you need to have some marker pens, which is waterproof. And metal detectors, normally don't use it in domestic animal autopsies, but in wild animal autopsies, it is compulsory, it's mandatory that you should be going for a metal detection, because any sort of death in wildlife can be treated as something poached. So if you want to see, if you want to make sure that it's not poached, or not even a gunshot has gone inside the body, you see to it that it's being checked with the metal detector, and see that nothing remains inside. And external examiner, again, you start the autopsy. Before you start the autopsy with the gloves on, you should be doing some other observations on the exterior of the body, which is the general condition. of the animal. The general condition means you cachexia, that will tell you that the animal was sick for a while, or probably with some wheezing diseases. So that again gives you an indication of the exact condition of the animal. And also you can check whether these eyes are sunken in orbits or deep into the orbits, mean that indicates some sort of a dehydration or an inanition. So that means the animal was sick, and the species, age, breed, and sex should be noted, and that should be noted in a piece of paper. And what I used to do, it's better if you can have an assistant with you. It is better to have one more doctor with you for an autopsy, particularly if you're doing an autopsy on a large animal or some other animal which you're not familiar with. It's better to have two people, because two veterinarians, I mean, you have one more person to have a second opinion, or you can have one more person to discuss. One is good, two is better, but three is a crowd. I don't tell you that you entertain more people in the group and tell that this has been done by a big team of people. It is not at all necessary, and don't think you need a pathologist for a post-mortem. What you have done in your undergraduate studies for your classes in pathology, if you are good in a post-mortem room, and if you're slightly negligent in a post-mortem room during your graduate studies, probably that will reflect in the reports you are writing and the things you're doing in the field. And it's better, what I used to do is, I used to have an assistant with me. It's not a doctor. Probably I'll carry a doctor. I'll always call a doctor to accompany me for a post-mortem, because I can discuss things technically. And it's better not to discuss things in the local vernacular. If you are if you are in Kerala, please don't talk in Malayalam. If you are in some other place, don't talk your local language, because the people will be able to hear. But it's better to use technical terms when you discuss. That is what when you see these doctors speaking in hospitals, when you are admitted in a human hospital for some illness, you can see people just talking about in medical terms, which the normal person, even a veterinarian, would not be able to understand. So it's better to use some scientific and technical terms when you discuss the things amongst you. And another thing is that I prefer to have an assistant who holds a paper besides me. And when I tell what all things I've noted in my exterior examination, I tell him tell him or her to just note it down. And those jottings are very important when it comes to the final report. And moreover, in another thing, if you are seeing some injuries, if you're finding some burn scars, or if you're finding some swellings, it is better if you can have a piece of paper and draw a line in between and make it into two halves, tell it one is right and one is left, and make an outline of the surface of the animal, the exterior of the animal. You need not be a good artist to draw a lion or a cow. At least you see the contours. It should have a head and two limbs and two hind limbs with a tail, and one will be the left side and the other will be the right side, and you can exactly mark if there's an injury. If an injury is found near to the chest, you can just mark it on that particular part of the photo or the picture you are drawing, and tell there is a wound. You just put a drop. If it's an incised wound, you can just draw it like a dash. That means an incised wound. See, there is no golden rule or no hard and fast rule. What all legends or icons you are putting for your scars and your injuries. Again, it's all my assumption of things. If you would wish to put an incision, like a small dash for an incision, and if it's a instead, if you can just mark it in that piece of paper that there is an injury there or there is an abscess there, that would be of good value for you finally when you write the report. Discharges and exudates will be there in the exterior of the body, which you need to note, and probably, if given a chance, if you have a container, it is better, you can collect that for further analysis. So probably you'll be asking me, so what are the tests to be done on discharges and exudates? Even I don't know, because all these cases come to us all of a sudden, because we don't know the history of the case. Probably I told you that you should be having a history of the case. If it's not available, you are totally unaware of what has happened. You just collect some samples, you secretion, everything write or label in a piece of paper or label it in the container itself that it's a secretion, it's a genital discharge, or it's an oral discharge or a nasal discharge. And finally, we will decide based on the other lesions what you find inside, we will decide later what test will be done. So probably another question what we'll be asking is, see what is the preservative or anything to be used. It's better if you have a thermocol box with some gel packs in, without any preservatives. You can collect the secretions or the discharges or excretions, and you just keep it in the gel and the top of the frozen gel packs, because that will be safe till you add a preservative which is good enough for that particular sample or the clinical specimen. The skin and subcutaneous, you flay the skin and see for any subcuticular hemorrhages. Another important thing when you flay the skin, what you see is you have a subcuticular, like blunt trauma gives you some sort of contusion or a hematoma underneath the skin. And in humans, you don't have to flay the skin for, because you cannot do that also. You cannot flay the skin or even that is visible from outside. But in a thick-skinned organism like an animal or like a cow, where the skin is too thick, you have a blemish inside. You have to see whether there is some blunt trauma in any of the joints. And mucous membranes can be checked. If it's a fresh carcass, you check for color of the mucous membrane. Probably an injected mucous membrane tells there is some sort of a toxemia being set in, or an intriguing mucous membrane tells there is some sort of a liver problem inside, or even a pale mucous membrane tells that it's anemic, some sort of bleeding inside, or some sort of severe parasitism. So please don't jump into conclusion. At least make a note of the pallor of the mucous membrane. So those things should be noted down. And bones and joints have to be thoroughly checked for fractures, disarticulations, subluxations, and all. So that is really something very important before you go for the interior examination. And system-wise examination different from species to species. For that, I'll tell you, you need to have a thorough idea of what is the topography of the organs, how the organs are placed inside, particularly when you're dealing with do a post-mortem of an elephant, which you've not done before. You cannot tell that I have only seen an elephant, I've treated an elephant, but never done an autopsy. No. You do the work, you do it, practice always makes you perfect. So you keep on doing, you call somebody who is the so-called expert. I won't tell anybody is an expert, because a person who's been doing post-mortem for 20 years need not be an expert, probably another person, because that is why you need two persons to be there. No, one if you miss, the other person will be spotting you. So before I explain this slide, I think I'll go to the next slide and then again come back to this previous slide. So the types of evisceration methods, I think pathology people, if they are there in this particular forum, I think they'll be able to understand much better. The evisceration methods, you have different modes of evisceration, which is normally practiced in autopsies. The Vetzone methods, we all know the father of cellular pathology is Rudolf Virchow. The Vetzone method is the one which is being commonly practiced in autopsies. It is nothing but you dissect the specimen, the carcass, and then you take the organs one by one, place it in a polythene sheet or in a tarpaulin or any sort of impermeable material, and then you go for lesions. You observe for lesions, you slice of it, and you go for cross lesions. That is one method, taking organs one by one and examining it outside. Whereas the second method, I'm just introducing to you a few methods which you should be knowing. Handling a carcass of anthrax. Normally, you don't do a post-mortem. The telltale signs of anthrax, like bleeding from natural orifices, is not there. So unknowingly, your inadvertent exposure, to an anthrax carcass can also happen in the field. It's because the signs were not there. Severe bloating was also not there, which is all the classical signs of anthrax carcass. But still, when you open, you find a very big spleen. So that again, you have a suspicion, splenomegaly in a cattle would lead to your points. That will point to anthrax. So probably you will have a doubt what to do with that. No, immediately just putting that incision or putting it close and then throwing it is not there. Anyway, you opened it. So minimize the spread of that particular, minimize the contamination of the surfaces with that excretion from the secretions. Instead, what you can do is you can just go for an in-situ observation of the lesions. Don't take any of this lesion. Split open the the body cavity mid-ventrally, and you see the thorax, you see the abdomen, you see all those organs, see where there is some accumulation of fluid inside. So that is an in situ observation without taking any of the organs out. The advantage is that in case of some diseases which can cause a human hazard, like in human autopsies, when they have suspicion like AIDS or some other diseases which can be spread from man to man, normally they do this type of Rokitansky method of evisceration. But the disadvantage is that you cannot go into the details of the organ just because you're not slicing it too much, or the organism is not accessible, you're not handling the organ at your will. You have restraints of space, so that is why you have a disadvantage of clearly observing the lesions and depicting out. And Lethrow's method is another method of post-mortem wherein you take out the system block, end block. You have an organ system like, take your cardiopulmonary system as a plug, wherein you have both lobes of the lung along with your heart. And your GI system comes along as another plug, wherein you have your stomach and your intestines together. Your kidneys and urinary bladder along with the genitalia comes as the another plug. So that is again another different method of evisceration. So again, I'll go back to the previous slide. I'm just telling you what are things you should be doing with this different organs. Normally we do, the large animal will be on a lateral recumbency, or the small animals you can place it in dorsal recumbency and go for a mid-ventral incision. Whereas normally in big animals, normally we go for flank incisions and probably mid-ventral incision, then flap the skin. And you see, first approach would be to the abdominal cavity, where you should be very careful not to puncture the big organs and not to puncture the intestines even, because you need to know whether there is a big accumulation of fluid inside, or water inside, or gas inside. And the cavities, the presence of fluid inside the cavities, like your abdominal cavity indicating peritonitis, offensive order of the discharge indicates some sort of a chronic infection. And when you find a case of peritonitis inside and a foul-smelling discharge or a foul-smelling exudation inside the peritoneal cavity, indicating peritonitis, see for adhesions or specific lesions in specific organs. Normally, if you have an organ and a chronic inflammation of your internal organs and your abdominal organs, normally if you have a chronic issue, that results in peritonitis. Or even if you have a rupture of any of these organs, that can again result in peritonitis. Of course, your heart, your lungs, trachea, your upper airways, your bronchi, and your middle cell lymph nodes again gives you an idea of what has happened in the upper respiratory tract. Your kidneys, urinary bladder, and other things again tells about your respiratory system. I think I should not be going into detail of all this because it's again this common. The lesions you will find, but how to interpret and put it in a report is very important. So normally the last point, the last item, what we normally neglect and we don't try to break in is the cranium. Because if you get sufficient lesions on the other systems, why should you really go for opening the cranium and going for your brain examination? But if you have a clinical history of the animal showing nervous signs or some sort of ataxia or some sort of CNS signs, probably you will have to expect some lesion in the brain. For that, you need to open the brain and see for hemorrhages, edema, dependent lesions, or subarachnoid hemorrhages or something like that. Anyway, so the reportable. Anyway, now after taking all these lesions into consideration, you have to tell the location of the lesions first, whether it's the parenchyma, the surface, or it's deep-seated. The location is very important, and for that you need to know the lobe or the area in which the apical lobe of the lung or the dorsal lobe of the lung. So don't worry about that. I'm not telling that I'm an expert in this topographic anatomy, but still, what I do is I just mark it and I take a first snap of that. Later on, I refer textbooks and tell whether it's which lobe is that. I'm not sure now cow has how many lobes on the right side and how many lobes on the left side, and dog will be having a different type of pattern of lobes of the lung. So you have to point it. You just give a point or this thing and take a snap, and finally we decide where exactly the location is. But the touch and the feel of that organ will not come to you later once it's fixed in formality. For that, you should be really good enough to palpate and see for the consistency of that particular organ. The color of course, that probably if you have a very good camera which gives you a true to life color, that you can very well appreciate the lesions based on the color. The size and shape of the organs, the weight of the organs, again, is another important thing. The number and percentage, if there's a lymph node involvement, if you find all these peripheral lymph nodes enlarged, you find some sort of lymphadenitis, you are sure that some sort of a problem, either you that's going to have a real troublesome life for this particular animal in future. So the content also is very important. The fluidity contents, gas fill contents, or thick or pasty type of contents. That is again another important thing what should be taking note of. The order again is very important. And morphological descriptions and interpretations. Of course, you can tell it's your organs. Organs maybe it can be unilateral or bilateral. Particularly in bad organs in lungs, in kidneys, you can tell whether these lesions are found in both. Found in both means it indicates some sort of a systemic involvement, wherein the whole body is getting involved. Whereas in a local, like one lobe of the lung getting involved, probably that can be that's not a too fatal condition. Probably your prognostic indicators will tell you whether it's good or it's going to be worse later. And focal or multifocal or disseminated infection. If you find some lesion in the serous membranes in the pleura and peritoneum, probably you find as a disseminated, as in case of miliary tuberculosis, you find a lot of small fish-shaped or millet-shaped nodules all throughout. You find it as you describe it as a disseminated nodular type of lesion. And locally extensive and diffuse. What does that mean? Exactly. Locally extensive means in one part of the lobe of the lung you have a lesion which is extensive and it covers only that particular lobe. Diffuse means the entire lobe is affected. Entire side of the lung is affected. The right half is affected or the left half is affected. Then the whole body or localized. Again, it's another terminology based on that you can describe. And the severity of lesions, I'm not the best person to tell you which is minimal, moderate, marked, slight, and severe. At least I can take the first one and the last one. I can tell it's a minimal reaction, a minimal inflammation, what's happening, and I can tell it's severe. The rest is all, it's subjective. I may consider that as moderate, whereas you may consider it as marked or slight. So that again differs from people, again from person to person. The etiology very well you will be able to make out if you can. By your other studies like a microbiological assays, you can tell it's a bacterial, chemical, or viral. If you have a diagnostic facility, definitely you will be able to make out. The type of lesions, particularly if you have some hemorrhagic lesions inside the body, in parenchymatous organs and in surfaces like serosal surfaces and mucosal surfaces, where you have hemorrhages, wherein you have small type of hemorrhages like capillary bleeds. Probably those will be called as petechiae. They are a bigger blanched area. Oh, sorry, not a blanched area. A bigger area, red, diffused type of hemorrhage. You call it as a ecchymotic patch or an extravasation when you find this whole blood as such in the body cavities. And a purulent type of exudation where you find too much of pus in the body cavities, probably as an abscess or even pus-filled cavities. You call it as a purulent inflammation, and fibrinous inflammation and fibrinous purulent inflammations. Those you can see in these particular pictures. What you see there, those are all lung tissues, and there you can see a sort of a fibrin covering. It's a fibrin purulent covering. Fibrin happens as a part of a chronic change, so that you can explain or you can describe in your report as a fibrin purulent inflammation. Post-mortem changes, as we all know, there is classical post-mortem, your rigor mortis, that is a stiffening of the body. The post-mortem cooling of the body, we call it as alga mortis. And livor mortis is nothing but the lividity or the stains due to hypostatic condition, what happens in a dead body. So, stages of the rigor mortis, it's not, it's just a quick check or a spot check of rigor mortis. If you're going to handle a body which is warm and flaccid, you can tell the rigor mortis is not setting, it's warm still. That means it's less than 3 hours. Around 3 to 4 hours, we expect rigor mortis to set in. And it still be warm, and stiffness has occurred because rigor happens from as early as 3 hours and goes up to 8 to 12 hours for full rigor to come. We be in the stage for again another 6 more hours or 7 more hours. And when the warmth is gone, you just consider that stiffness will still be there. Warmth is gone means it is past 8 hours. Again, the exact time of death or your post-mortem interval is something very hard to assess. Even medical doctors are finding it very difficult. You've got many other means to find out, the time of death or your post-mortem interval. That is what the post-PMI or your time of death is the same. You cold and flaccid, more than 36 hours, you tell is cold and flaccid because you don't have rigor then, your rigor is totally past, and but the body will be, or the dead body will be totally cold. It's more than 36 hours, then you expect some sort of putrefaction setting in. And alga mortis, the rate at which body cools after death, cools very little during the first hour, but later on at the rate of 1.5 degree Fahrenheit per hour, it cools down. Again, the equation is being written down in 95.6 degrees centigrade. The human body, if it has cooled 3 degrees, that means this body has been there after death. It has elapsed a period of around 2 to 3 hours. So livor mortis, again, it's a hypostatic congestion. On the dependent parts, you find the color. It comes in the hues of red. Maroon is normal. And based on the lividity in human carcasses, human corpse, you will be able to find out what is the type of poisoning, if at all it's there, you can find out. And if the lividity is found in the front and the carcass is lying on the back, what does it mean? Particularly in fair-skinned animals or probably in pigs. Pigs, I think it's a bit tough, because it's only every small dragging or every small impact on the pig skin probably will cause a blemish or a reddening or a bluing of the skin. But otherwise, not so hairy breeds of dogs. If you find the lividity in the top and if you find the animal in the other, place on the other side, probably that means the carcass or the body or the cadaver has been tampered. Somebody has tilted it to the other side. Because lividity never happens at the top, lividity happens only on the lower post part, because that is nothing but hypostatic congestion. So the putrefaction, again, it appears after a period of 36 hours. You find many chemicals being produced from the cadavers, what you call as the putrescent and cadaverine. The terms itself tells you that there is a rotten smell of the cadaver. The cadaver smell is because of the cadaverine. That is again an amine which is produced by the carcass. The 3 stages, mainly what happens in putrefaction would be the changing color of tissues, the evolution of gases in tissues, the liquefaction of gases. These are the things what happens in putrefied carcass. So this is exactly picture of how the putrefaction sets in. I think I'll just cut off my video for a while for you to get the screen a little more bigger. You can see the first one is bloated. There you can see the carcass is bloated. And the next on the right side, you find a lot of flies. So after decomposition, after death, the decomposition starts as early as 36 hours. And by the time the carcass is bloated, you find these flies coming into the particular carcass and laying eggs in moist surfaces, mainly on the orifices of rectal orifice or the nasal orifice. And these flies have got a period where have got a succession, because the first flies which get deposited in that, but in any carcass, would be the butterflies. We have all studied about butterflies, your green butterflies and your blue butterflies, your Califora and your Lucidia species. Those are the ones to infest any carrion or any decaying or any dead body. So these flies come there. First, they deposit the eggs, and the eggs will be hatched out into the larvae as early as 6 hours, probably within hours, 4 hours later, it turns into maggots. And the maggot has got different stages. It has got a first stage, second stage, third stage. All these stages of maggots will get transformed to the final stage of the maggot by about a week. And after that, it goes to a pupation stage, and then it goes to an adult phase, or like in the adult fly, just flies off from there. So after this particular phase, you have this keratinization phase, wherein a lot of saprophytic bacteria come into picture. The most important ones being the Clostridium welchii, which is the main saprophytic invader of any decaying carcass or any carrion. And also we've got Streptococcus and Staphylococcus, again saprophytic organism pushing in there might to decay the carcass. These are all good for us, for the carcass to get decayed. And finally, you find some sort of beetles like this, which are called the necrophorus beetles. These are the yellow striped beetles, the necrophorus, which feeds on not only the dead tissue but also on the maggots. So probably this sequence of arrival is very typical. in fact, in between you find after the botflies just leave all the they put the maggots there. Probably you find some musca species also, or domestic houseflies may also come and visit, but they're not sarcophagus. So again, I'll tell you, sarcophagus beetles also come. Beetles also come. So this type of forensic entomology is one thing which is being commonly used in many of the countries for forensic analysis. Again, the next slide will tell you the putrefaction changes, what happens when it's in different environments. You have got 1 week in air. The carcass, if it is there in water, it may be retained for its freshness for about 2 weeks. And if it's in the soil, it may be retaining the freshness for 8 weeks. And as I was telling before, this forensic entomology is one Chinese physician or a medical practitioner who had done a lot of work on entomology, working on how the flies come and how these flies are coming into sequence, and all these things have been well studied in this particular. I think he has written a book on this particular forensic entomology. Of course, if you search the net, you'll find many literature on forensic entomology, how to assess the time of death based on the arrival of the maggots and the arrival of the flies. So we come to the next one, is the post-mortem active artifacts, which really mislead you in finally coming out with a report, because pancreatic changes. You know that pancreas is one of the organs which gets decayed very fast, because autolytic changes will be very fast in pancreas. Just because pancreas contains all these enzymes, the exocrine and the endocrine pancreas. The exocrine pancreas produces your amylase, lipase, and those trypsin, which are all proteases. They immediately decays, or they autolyze the tissues. And you find in many cases as a part, your stomach getting burst, and those, the fluid just contaminated, even it bursts the diaphragm, and the stomach fluid gets into the thoracic cavity, which can be listed as, the animal has devoured something, some liquid inside. So it's again an artifact. Heat fractures and heat hematomas are also very common. Bloating and discoloration, blistering can happen. It can happen pre-mortem, because if it's been exposed to some sort of a heat or a fire, probably blisters can happen. But again, there will be signs of inflammation around the blister. But in a post-mortem blistering, you will find that epidermal slip, or the skin slippage is there, because its skin just comes out as a glove and stocking fashion. So that is what they normally tell in human medical legal practice. And purge fluid is something which you find from the nostrils and mouth. Sometimes we normally take it as an anthrax exudation, or probably if you don't want to do the post-mortem, I probably tell you that this is anthrax suspect, and we just get away with that particular case. So myocardial discoloration may be there as a part of a putrefactive change. Intestinal discoloration will be there. As you all know, the organisms or the bacteria inside the intestines, they form this hydrogen sulfide, and finally they keep the greenish discoloration to the intestine and the serosa, and all those organs which is in contact with the serosa gets a greenish discoloration. Sometimes in liver also it happens, but that may be probably due to bile inhibition. And in animals, which is being finally in the critical care, if you're going for some resuscitation or some CPR measures, probably your fibrillator pads will give you some sort of a new pressure into the chest cavity, outside the chest cavity. That is not, again, some blunt trauma, but it's a resuscitation artifact. So next, your time of death. Of course, assessing the time of death, you have certain things to be noted. Of course, these have all been described, and there is no exact formula, and there is no exact typical timings to tell after this hour it is going to change. Again, for all practical purposes, you can take this as a standard guideline. Color changes after 6 to 12 hours in summer. Again, your ambient temperature, environmental humidity, all these matters. These are all the common color changes after 6 to 12 hours. In winter, it's slightly less. Slightly more. Green color seen on the skin by, again, 12 to 18 hours, because your rigor is started. Your rigor is going to come down. You'll find your green color in the tissues. Softening of the parenchyma, liquefaction of the eyebrow, the opacity of the cornea, and the liquefaction of the eyeball happens within 6 to 12 hours. Foul smell emanates from the carcass by 24 to 48. After a day or two, you'll find foul smell emanating, again because of the cadaverine and the putrescence, which has been which has been produced by the carcass. The blisters form inside after a period of 36 hours. Soft parts, parenchymatous organs inside the body, they get, liquefied or slightly gets putrefied by 3 to 5 days. Maggots start appearing by 3 to 6 days. The last stage maggots would normally again go to the pupal stage where it don't feed. It is only the maggot stage and the larval stages that feed on the carcass. The rest of all, when it is pupated, it just falls on the ground. Again, that is the food for some other beetles, but it won't feed on the carcass. Then this is one thing I would always lecture on my pathology classes, because mode of death and cause of death and manner of death. All the time we have been discussing about modes of death. Cause of death. We have been taught in our duty classes the cause of death. Either you fix something like either you put it as asphyxia, or you put it as syncope, or you coma. If your respiratory system or your lung is involved, you put it as asphyxia, syncope for heart, and coma for your sinus. But I would differ in that particular point, because it's not really the cause of death. You have a problem, or your cause of death was nephritis or myocarditis or your hepatitis, which was the real cause of your illness. But how the animal or the human patient died is because of the asphyxia caused due to nephritis or myocarditis. So your mode of death would be asphyxia, syncope, and coma. Now I'm going to confuse you with another terminology as a manner of death, but fortunately it is not being used in veterinary practice. It's a natural death, an accidental death, a suicide, or a homicide. Because never I've seen an animal doing a suicide, so we'll just leave that. So first two, the mode of death and the cause of death, please take care when you tell somebody that, what is the cause of death? People tell us that, oh, it's due to asphyxia, due to a lung problem. No. The mode of death is asphyxia due to a lung problem, that is a cause. And type of autopsy reports, I should not be telling those people who are sitting in this forum how to write an autopsy report. All have been used to write the second type of format, which is a printed format. We know how to do a post-mortem, how to write a post-mortem printed format report. But there is something like a freestyle essay, wherein you write, now I, Dr. So-and-so, has done the autopsy of a dog named this, age this, belonging to this particular owner, and with a clinical history of so and so, and I have found such and such lesions in such and such organs, and finally, with reasonable certainty, I will be able to tell that this animal died due to this as a result of this. That is the style, the freestyle essay, what normally people write. The one good thing about freestyle essay is you don't have to touch upon all the points, what is there in the printed report. Probably you can focus on certain areas or certain points or certain organ systems where you find a lot of lesions. For example, if you want to describe the respiratory system a little more, you can tell right from the pharynx downwards. You have your upper airways. You have you find some what sort of hemorrhages in your anterior tracheal mucosa. You have your cartilaginous rings of your throat being broken, and all these things come, and finally come to your the lower tract, your primary bronchi, and all these things you can write very elaborately. But normally we adopt the second format, the printed format, which again you have the space to write, and it's not that format. That is a format means it is just giving you a space for writing one or two sentences. It's not that format to be used always, because I've seen people writing in the format. Format is nothing; it is just a pro forma of what should be used in a bigger picture. Because the pro forma will hardly give you a space for writing a big or an elaborate issue. If you want to elaborate something on the real cause of death, you need to have some space which will not be there in the pro forma. That is only a pro forma. You type it in your, not as a PDF file, you type it in a Word document, and then you type it all those lesions there and come to a conclusion at the end of the report. So points to note, again, I'm telling you another thing. People always ask, there are no lesions. How can you tell the animal died due to this particular cause? So I will tell you, it's not that all the time we may not be able to finally conclude the report with a diagnosis. Many times, either due to lack of expertise of the person who is looking, or the pathologist, or the person, the doctor who is, is doing the postmortem, or the lack of infrastructural facilities of your laboratory to finally give you some supplementary information regarding the diagnosis, or the partial history not being given to you, the history of it's not being given to you, which would have been a good source of information for you to conclude the diagnosis. That is not provided. Probably you will have a negative autopsy. At the same time, sometimes you'll have an obscure autopsy. It's slightly different from negative autopsy. Obscure autopsy is something that you do a postmortem, a system-wise postmortem, you do a detailed examination of all organs, but you don't find any telltale signs or telltale lesions or pathognomonic lesions so as to attribute it to a cause. In that case, you find it as an obscure autopsy, and you don't have any problem with just writing that. I have written many reports. I've told that the cause is undetermined or the cause could not be ascertained. The available information, I cannot tell due to the lack of expertise and due to the lack of facilities, I'm not able to ascertain the cause, which would be which would not be the right point to tell from a doctor's side, because the onus is on the person who's doing the autopsy to get it done by some laboratory which is competent to take up the work and give you a diagnosis. And never use the terms probably, and particularly in the case of forensic autopsies or veterolegal autopsies, if you are using the term, probably, the thing is that you don't have any idea whether it is true or not. Again, you are giving the chance to somebody, other person, or the person on the other side to think whether he has told probably, so I'm telling probably it's not. So don't give him a chance to just argue on that. Please don't tell probably. You can just fix it. Because I'm telling you, even in a court of law, you being a doctor, you've been called as a witness. Anyway, I'll be coming to that. I'm not, mixing all these things together. Agonal causes. You know what is agonal causes? Agonal period is the period after death and before you start the postmortem procedure. Because there are many things which happen in between after death. Probably a carcass which is being lifted from one side to the other, carcass which is being dragged in a concrete floor from one part to the other part, near to the pit where the postmortem is going to be done. So all these lead to agonal changes inside the body or in the exterior of the body. So those changes they have to be noted, but should not be a part of your final confirmation or your final. That should not be a lead for your diagnosis. So please see to it that you note all these agonal, because a postmortem aberration, when you drag the carcass after death, will be slightly different from an aberration which happened before death. Before death, an aberration or sort of a wound or a scar or a contusion, what has happened, a laceration or a bruise, what has happened. Bruise normally comes in an inflammatory pattern. You have a slight sort of a gluing around this particular wound, that open wound, and that indicates some sort of inflammation. But if it is occurred post-mortem, you won't find that sort of inflammatory change around the lesion. So there are some other diseases where you don't find any pathognomonic lesions, but you are forced to write a report wherein you can write, you didn't find anything, but based on circumstantial evidences, you are not 100% sure. It can be proved not without doubt, but it can be told that it may be due to a milk allergy or even for a floppy kid syndrome in goats. You don't find any lesion in the small kid. You find only big volume of milk inside the stomach compartment, and the kid suddenly dies without any other problems. Probably some lung changes will be there as a part of your bulging of your stomach, and of course there will be some lactic as a part of a lactic acidosis. There will be some changes too. And anaphylaxis after vaccinations, probably you won't find any sort of good lesions to tell that this has been a result of the anaphylactic shock due to vaccination. Even we had problems when we started the foot-and-mouth disease vaccination programs. Some animals suddenly died out of a sudden after vaccination within 6 hours or 8 hours after vaccination, which you're sure the animal was healthy before, and after vaccination, animal didn't get sick. It suddenly fell down and died. But people were asking us to do the postmortem, do the histopathological evaluation of the tissues. So I just asked them, did you find any lesion in the organ? Find some lesion in the organ. I think it's worthwhile doing a histopath evaluation. If you're not finding any gross lesions, what is the use of just simply wasting my time and my resources on doing something futile? So I told them not to do that, but anaphylaxis can happen all of a sudden with minimal clinical signs and minimal clinical lesion, with minimal lesions. So anesthetic casualties again comes with no lesions. Botulism again, but in poultry, of course, botulism comes with a limber neck where you have a clinical sign. In such cases, pathognomonic lesions will not be there, but signs may be pathognomonic for that particular disease, as in case of botulism, where you have limber neck in poultry, being a classical sign of the neck being bent downwards, being calling as a limber neck. It's a Clostridium botulinum infection. And tetanus in goats, normally you have a wooden horse appearance with the eyes, with the ear stiff, the tail stiff, that you can call it as tetanus. But after death, when you do the post-mortem, nothing will be there in the carcass to tell it's tetanus. So your clinical signs should be correlated with your post-mortem. So pathognomonic signs should be there, and that should be taken into account when you finally write the receipt. Deficiency diseases, we have a lot of deficiency diseases which can be corrected, but nothing remains on post-mortem as an issue. The heat stroke again, we got a lot of this summer we got a lot of bird deaths. People just suspect it as bird flu because suddenly birds dying, and it's probably when we checked all these circumstantial, we just altered the management practices, this mortality stopped. That means it was heat stroke. So hypostatic congestion, again, your lividity tells you with the basis of the color, you can tell whether it's cherry red, bright red, red brown, bluish violet, bronze or pink color, based on the conditions which you really have based on this. But this is not really lividity, and we don't need to be really concerned about in animal practice, because none of the animals you find in the lividity except for pigs. They don't have too much of hair, but other animals doesn't show too much of lividity. And if you really want to preserve a carcass, you can use a solution like this. Your formalin, sodium borate, sodium citrate, glycerin, glutathione, and methanol can be used as an embalming. It can be used in different composition, and finally it can be used as an embalming fluid. And now it's time for one exercise. So I've got a few questions for you, because I just try to break the monotony of my speech. You've been seeing me on the slides for a long time. So I'll just give you an exercise for 10 seconds. You will have to just think about, because the same points which I have been telling in the previous slides, there's one exercise. You just have to click A, B, or C. I'll give you 10 seconds and 2 to 3 seconds for clicking it. Please be ready. The next slide is a question for you. It's a quiz. I just don't want to make you sleep with my monotonous lectures. So just have an exercise like this. There you have a picture. I've told about Casper's dictum. I think you have some time for my explanation, and then you have another 10 seconds for you to think. So as I've been telling about the Casper's dictum, and my question in this is, which of these, which carcass will be preserved fresh for the longest period of time? I repeat my question. Is it carcass A, carcass B, or carcass C in 3 different environments? Which of these carcasses? No, you don't have to type in your chats. I will give you a poll. You just have to tick whether it's A, B, and C. Just giving you some time to think which carcass is best preserved for the longest period of time. And there we will start our polls. You can see on your screen. You've got some options like A, B, and C. You can very well click on that, and finally that result will come. Please click on the slide in your screen, and please don't click on the chat box. I think a lot of responses coming. Totally, we have got 68 users at present. I need 68 responses now. 67 responses. Probably I'm the one person who is held out. Anyway. That's fine then. I think I'll have to stop. I think there's still more people to respond. Need some more time. I think probably people might have logged out and went. Anyway, I'm not waiting for the rest of the people. I've got 45 responses with me. Out of the 65 people attending this particular forum, I've got 45 responses. And the major response was C. Otherwise, that is the 29%, 42% of the respondents told it is C. And that is a really good, what positive response for me. It means people have understood what I've taught, or what I've been telling so far. Because the longest preserved specimen would be the one which is there in the soil. A carcass in air, a carcass in water, and a carcass in soil. The soil preserves the carcass for a longer period of time. Thank you so much for the response. So we'll go to the next slide then, please. Okay, now we start with the main topic, special emphasis to veterolegal autopsies. Veterolegal autopsies is nothing but what we call as the forensic autopsies. I tell you one thing, we don't have a standard code of practice or any veterolegal code in our particular country. Please don't tell other senior officers or professors and all, they have some standardized some sort of a code. But even in foreign countries, you don't have proper codes. It all started with the initial code, what was used by the Bishop of Bamberg, what he called as the Bamberg Code, and then came the Caroline Code, and then there was a Theresian Code. There were a lot of codes in Europe which was used, and that was all for medical legal practice. Adopting bits and pieces of that particular medical legal codes, people started working on veterolegal codes too. So you don't have any classic definitions, how to do, and many of the things have been adapted from your medical legal practices. So how to start a veterolegal autopsy? Before you start doing the autopsy, I tell you that there's nothing in particular about the autopsy per se, because the procedure, everything remains the same. You don't have any problem. The diagnostic autopsy, what we are performing, that is still good, that's fine for a veterolegal autopsy, except for the requirements what you should be having before you start. You please don't start it as, you should be very dynamic and enthusiastic in starting a veterolegal autopsy, because your policeman coming to you, and you don't have time. Probably people are afraid of policemen, particularly during COVID, lockdown days. People start thrashing, policemen start thrashing people. And even otherwise, you feel you have a scare about policemen. But still, what I would tell is the first and the primary requirement is, suppose I'm just giving an instance where a farmer is coming to you, telling that I've got a few birds, dead birds with me. I put them in a packet and I'm just bringing it to you. And this was maliciously poisoned by my neighbor, which I'm sure I've already accused him, and I filed a case in the nearby police station. When asking him, I've told the police to make their case and other things ready. Meanwhile, what he's asking me is, see, doctor, you do one thing, you just give me a post-mortem report and you find out whether things are there, some poison is inside, just to have an idea of whether it's a malicious poison. So immediately, what will you be doing? So this particular case, will you accept the carcass, or will you tell him to go? Please don't drive him away, because again, it's a man's concern about his own birds. Probably may not be that valuable. Again, there are sentiments or other ties attached. So please don't drive him away. Just tell him that there are certain requirements of formalities. And what all formalities you have to tell, that should be told in the first instance itself. Because I've seen people telling one thing, he's going and coming back. Sir, you didn't tell me that, there's another thing to be followed. Please don't do that. What all things you have to tell to the person you tell. So the first thing what you have to get is, you have to get a written order, because for any forensic autopsy or for any sort of forensic work or anything related to court and cases, two things what is really required is, one is your authorization and the other is the consent. These are the two things which are really required. Authorization means somebody has to authorize you to do the work. Because a farmer cannot authorize, even if I have a problem, see, my birds are dying, somebody has destroyed my birds, but I don't have the authority to authorize a doctor to do a post-mortem or a veterolegal autopsy. For a normal autopsy, very well, he can just give a request and we'll be doing the autopsy. But a forensic autopsy should come with a police officer. And which police officer is not a civil police officer, but a police officer not below the rank of a sub-inspector. Of course, a CI, a DYSP, or an IPS fellow can even write, but they don't normally do. But a sub-inspector who is in charge of the local police station, he should be writing the letter with the seal and other things, put. Or else an FIR, or FIR should be there, and also or an order from the executive magistrate. Executive magistrate can directly, he can tell to do, because if the case is being registered suo motu, probably an executive magistrate, without the help of the police, can tell you to do the post-mortem. Carefully read the FIR, what's written in the FIR. So do we have to go there and collect the samples, or is the sample coming with the police, or you have to read what all things have been described? So based on that, that is your basis on which we are going to work. And the time and date of arrival of the carcass should be noted. Many times what happens is this policeman or the police officer normally sends the letter and the carcass along, sends the person to the hospital to request the doctor for a postmortem. But carcass should not be accepted from a farmer. It should be handed over by a police officer, because all these are considered to be exhibits in court. All these exhibits have got a chain of custody. We call it as a chain of custody, because the time the bird or the animal has been picked up from the crime scene, we call it as a crime scene. That is an exhibit. That exhibit will be properly stored or will be carefully handled by the people responsible or the people authorized to do it. A farmer cannot pick a carcass and give it to us for a veterolegal autopsy. The police officer should be the person who has to follow the chain of custody and give it to us. And probably sometimes you find a person, a plainclothes man, bringing a request from the sub-inspector of police and a carcass telling them you have to do an autopsy or a forensic autopsy for this particular case. What you have to do is, you are not finding a person, you are finding a plainclothes man. So you're not sure whether it's a policeman. So what you should be doing is, you should be telling him to give his ID card to make sure that it's again a policeman who is handing over the carcass to you. And no unnecessary delay should be there in doing the postmortem. Of course, you can tell the postmortem should be done in broad daylight, but unfortunately, we don't have too much of facilities like broad daylight and too much of lighting facilities inside the hospital. So, as quick as possible, do the postmortem. Suppose if you have an hospital timings at 3 o'clock and the carcass has been brought to you by 2 o'clock, I would tell that it's better you do the postmortem or conduct the postmortem business that day itself. Spare another extra half an hour after your office timings and do the postmortem. But again, your packing, sealing, labeling, and the other formalities which is to be done along with the autopsy for the chemical examiner would be another cumbersome task, and that takes some time. For that, you can postpone or defer it to the next day. Postmortem can be done as quick as possible. Otherwise, what will happen is, you have to tell the police officer either to keep it in his custody, or suppose if he asks you to do, you have to keep it in your hospital fridge freezer or your -20 freezer. And that too, if you're doing that, if you're deferring the postmortem to a later date or the next day, you have to tell the police officer to come to the hospital the next day and take the specimen and hand it over to you again. Once the specimen is put inside the freezer, that will be tagged in the presence of the police officer. The tag will be untied only again in the presence of the police officer for the postmortem. So, no unauthorized persons should be allowed to be present in the postmortem room. Nobody is supposed to enter, but if the police person is there, he has got every right to be inside the postmortem room if he has got the correct some evidence on the postmortem. Definitely that can be done. And the key points to be done, to be noted here is the examination should be done in daylight. Examination should be thorough and complete. It should be a thorough examination, means the exterior of the carcass, what all things, what all wounds you find, what all injuries you find inside the carcass, all these should be taken note of. And you should be having a fair knowledge of the normal and pathological signs. Normal and pathological signs, probably it's very difficult, only if you're doing a lot of post-mortem autopsies, almost every other day, if you're exposed to autopsies, probably you'll be an expert in that. Even otherwise, you can consult with people who are really knowing the subject. You can ask them, at least take a photo and WhatsApp to them and ask them what exactly the relation is. Even if you don't, if you're not able to make a diagnosis then and there, take a snap and refer it to the laboratory with the experts or refer it with textbooks, and then finally you conclude your report. So, all the details to be noted during the autopsy should be noted on the spot. I tell you, certain things sometimes you may miss. Even if you have your photos also, some things which are very crucial probably may be missed. like an ectoparasite, like tick infestations in the body. Probably in your photo, they may not be clearly visible. Instead, you make a noting that ticks were present, ectoparasites were present, or a small prolapse of the rectal sphincter probably may not be noted in your photo. That you can take a note of that. The notes and the report sent to the court, and the final report should always stand. And this particular jottings, what you do in the postmortem room, need not be an official document, but always I keep it as an official document in my personal file or my personal possession. Just because if I want to again recall all those memories, what I was doing in the postmortem room, I need to have an impression, or I need to know what I was writing that time. Once you get it typed, probably it's another artificial, scripting, wherein sometimes you won't get the exact feeling of what you had at that particular point of time. And sometimes I'll tell you, you will be called for a second autopsy. Hope you understand what a second autopsy is. Second autopsy is nothing but you will be called to exhume or disinter. Disinter is INTER. Again, you're exhuming the body, taking out of the ground, and doing a post-mortem again. For that, again, you need an authorization from a judicial magistrate or a police officer for a second autopsy. A second autopsy may be done for many conditions. Probably the first autopsy, doctor, if he has given a report and the court finds it is not convincing, or if the court needs more details to be brought, he can order for us, and the court can order for a second autopsy. The second autopsy can be done by an expert, normally done by a person who is more competent to do that. In foreign countries, what they normally use, when it's in a court of law, people go and ask, they advocate, the first question what they ask the doctor is, are you a pathologist? Are you competent to do a postmortem? So here, nobody asks like that. If you are a doctor with a BPSc qualification or registered medical practitioner under the veterinary council, you can do a postmortem. Nobody is preventing you from doing that. So the second autopsy can also be done. So fine, you do your autopsy, and I think I'm not going into details of what all things to be collected. Of course, that will be there. And finally, after you submit your report in the court, you may be called in as in different roles. You may be called in as a fact witness or an opinion expert, otherwise what I call as the expert witness or a consulting expert. As per the Indian Evidence Act or IPC, I think 1872 Indian Evidence Act, IEA, Indian Evidence Act, I think section 45 deals with the expert witness. You will be called as a fact witness. What exactly is a fact witness? Suppose if you have a relation with the case or a bearing with the case. Suppose a case which we have treated upon before death, and finally that is terminated in death. You can do the postmortem. Nobody prevents you from doing the unless and until there is a litigation telling that there is a wrongdoing on part of the doctor who has treated. Otherwise, a doctor who is treating can very well do the postmortem because it is for the doctor to know what has happened. So you may be called as a fact witness when you attend the case and you do the postmortem. So you will be a fact witness and also an opinion expert later when you call when you call in a court of law. Opinion expert is nothing but the person who is doing the postmortem report and giving the report to the court. So court will not ask you some big questions about what you have to be knowing about pathology and the lesions and the pathogens of the disease. Court just asks you what all things you've written the report. You just have to substantiate whether these things are right. The first question probably what they ask is, are these findings and all these observations which is written in the report, is it done by you or somebody else? With your signature beneath, you won't be able to tell that it is somebody else. You are the person who is responsible for what has been written about. So you endorse your findings. That is the first thing. And probably the cross question, probably the other advocate will ask, probably, are you sure that this question is going to be, this animal is going to be the same animal which just died, or is some other animal which has been tampered by the plaintiff? No. Just because it is this chain of custody. I never accepted any sample from any of these other than legal authorities. The police handed over the sample to me. That is my chain of custody I've maintained all throughout till I produce the report. So, in fact, there is one French medical legal authority, a famous person who's known as Brodel. There's one famous French medical legal authority. He used to tell, when you are called as an expert witness in a court of law, you always remain as a man of science. That means you have no victim to avenge, no guilty to be punished, or no innocent to be saved. That means you're totally impartial. You don't have any bias. What all things you saw on the gross lesions, you have recorded, and that has been explained by the court. Explained in the court. And willful negligence or willful falsification of your statements, again, perjury, causes you another, bad sections will put you in prison. So be sure that whatever you are writing should be there. So in fact, I would tell you, if you have something, if you're giving a report or forensic autopsy report, it's better you have the report. You give the report to the person who has given you the request, and you have it in your office copy, and keep one personal copy with you till you retire from service or even after, because the case may be adjourned, maybe adjourned sine die, and finally, when you are old and you are retired or superannuated from service, you may be called for appearing for that particular case as an expert witness. That time, it will be very hard for you to recollect all those things what has happened. So this is again, you just won't be able to forget this particular man. It is Locard. Edmond Locard is one person who has started the first crime laboratories in Europe, and his principle tells you that every contact leaves a trace. Means an assailant or a culprit or an accused who is there in a crime scene, either he drops something there in the scene or he takes something there from there. That means there is some contact between the assailant or the culprit and the particular surroundings. So we have to be very careful and meticulous in handling the scene. Why I'm telling this is sometimes you may be called as a fact witness, because many a times, sometimes the policemen ask you to come to a particular crime scene, because I'll tell you an example. There are a lot of birds in a farm. You find 50 birds dead out of a total flock of 100. And suddenly suddenly the owner reports that it's a malicious intent and somebody has poisoned my birds. So in that case, the case has been registered. The police tells you to come and select some carcasses for doing the veterolegal autopsy, which normally I tell my fellow vets, my friends, my colleagues, better not to go to the crime scene, because once you are in the crime scene, you have to look, or you have to make a note of what is happening around. It's not the carcass alone. The carcass may be dead. Carcass may be just dead, it's dead on the litter or in the ground or in the cage. But your peri-necropsy scene, your macro and micro environment sometimes may be asked in a court, because when you take the carcass from there, the police takes a note of that in the FIR or the measure, what you call the FIR. If your name is written, that the doctor was there in the crime scene and the doctor has picked up those carcasses for forensic autopsies. It is my duty, and if you put a sign in the FIR beneath, that means whatever is written in the FIR means there will be some circumstantial evidence which they normally write. You are also a party to that. Just won't be able to tell that, and I'm not seeing that, because this peri-necropsy scene also should be there in your report. And poisoning, I think a malicious poisoning can be due to many things. I think I'll just keep all these slides. I think time is getting, I think it's almost 8 o'clock. We start almost 1.5 hours down the lane. I think we need to interact a little bit. So I think I'll just make my slides a bit fast. And I've got a library of photos and a few more questions too. So please hang on. We'll have a few more questions. So poisoning, so these are the other normal poisons which come as a part of your related cases. So finally, when it's poisoning, what you have to do is you find a bottle of poison there in the farm or the shed. You found that there's a bottle of poison, but you're not sure whether the animal is ingested. So if the animal is ingested, just come into the stomach or the rumen. So probably you'll have to take the rumen contents and the stomach contents to establish the source of the source first, means the fodder sample of this the poison bottle, the source of the poison, and the stomach contents will be the source of the element which is trying to establish the ingestion point. And your liver, spleen, and kidney, where the metabolic processes happen. Now, all detoxification of any toxin or any poison happens in the liver. You collect spleen, liver, and blood to establish whether it is being absorbed in the body and has caused a real problem. And to establish the excretion, probably you have kidney, urine, and milk if it's possible. If that is a sample of sample which can be collected, probably you can take a collection of these two. But kidney, liver, spleen, blood, stomach contents, these are normal samples which we normally take for your toxicology analysis. So the relevance of these three, when you are going to, suppose you are going on a crime scene, it's better to have a look into all these things. Number of animals housed. Even if you're not going to the crime scene also, it's better to have an idea of these things, which will give you an idea whether it's a poison. Because before you start the post-mortem, you should be having an idea in mind that it's probably can be a contagious or infectious disease, a per-acute disease which has suddenly caused the death of an animal. So the number of animals housed, the number of animals that the case mortality, the case fatality rate, the mortality rate in the herd of the flock. Like 10 animals in the same manger, fed with the same ration, and one animal suddenly dying, you just won't be able to tell it's a poisoning case because nobody will poison an animal like that. Unless and until you are too envious that this animal is producing more and you really want to kill it. Normally people don't do like that. So the method of feeding again is very important, whether there is some change of diet or the regularity of the feeding. You have fed something extra, like some sort of extra things like which can cause some abdominal acidosis or some sort of problems like that. Changes in rations, or the person you'll be looking after. Is there a change in the person who is looking after? A new person probably may not be knowing the etiquette what is happening in that particular shed. Probably he may use a different sort of method to feed or something of that sort. So you can look into all these things. So rodenticides or fertilizers, if there's a warehouse or a storage place nearby where you're using some baits or some rat poisons, which can again contaminate the fodder or the food which being fed to the animals. And organoleptic evaluation based on your smell, sight, and all these things really work well. I think the color, if you have a copper suspicion, your greenish blue stomach contents tell there's a copper poison. And yellow, for picric acid stains all the contents and even your tissues yellow. And cyanide, if you have a cherry red color of the blood, they can all, because once you reach this spot, you may not be able to appreciate all this. But still, you can find the cherry red color of blood means you can suspect the cyanide poisoning. Rose color of the blood is a heavy metal like an arsenic. Nitrate comes with the brown color of the blood, shock red brown in case of OP, and lymph nodes will be inflamed or reddish color in case if there's a radioactive fallout or some sort of a spill like that. And odor, bleeding ulcers inside the body. When you cut open the viscera, you find bleeding ulcers, you find the apple cider vinegar, apple cider smell would be there in bleeding ulcers. OP comes with a garlic smell. Some tell you there's rotten garlic. Garlic smell is the thing. And cyanide comes with a bitter almond. For that, you need to know how a bitter almond smells like. Otherwise, there's no use telling all this. But again, all these things, your organoleptic evaluation that can be put as a note in your report, but that will not be treated as a sure shot in a court of law. Urea comes with an ammoniacal order. Salmonellosis, you have a septic tank order. Of course, if you have a septic tank blockage, if you have flooding, you happen to come across this particular order. Clostridium comes with a rancid butter order. And specimens to be collected, I think you have all specimens to be collected for, specimens mainly all these vital organs, your spleen, your liver, your lungs, your heart, your kidney, your intestinal contents, your stomach contents. These are the main things what you have to collect. And for certain things you may have to collect, like your hair in cases of arsenic poisoning. These are some other things which you can collect for poisoning. But normally, for all practical purposes, you need to collect only starting from top to bottom your heart, your lungs, a piece of your heart, a piece of your lungs. Probably I'll tell you the quantity, how much to collect, but it's there in the coming slide. Intestinal contents, your gastric contents, we are in a loop type, and your kidneys, and just breathe. So the mode of preservation, unlike other analytical methods, for forensic analysis, you need to go for ice or rectified spirit or saturated saline. It's not simple as saline, normal saline, that should be saturated. You should find some salt particles in the bottom without getting dissolved. That means a supersaturated hypertonic saline. Or rectified spirit will also serve the purpose, but it's not available that easily. So you normally put it as saturated saline. And ice would be another good specimen. Preservative. But the problem is, ice quickly melts off. So saturated saline is the one what we are using normally in our laboratory. So forensic sciences, toxicology, molecular biology, histopathology, microbiology, entomology, and paternity testing. These are the normal things. But for toxicology is the main thing what we are really concerned about in veterinary practice. Quantity of blood material to be collected. Blood, you can collect about 30 to 50 ml. Percutaneous. Urine, 1 entire, half, or the full fat 200 mg. If you're suspecting some oozy poisoning, you should be collecting fat, which normally comes as a deposit in fat. Hair, 5 to 10 grams in cases of arsenic and heavy metal poisoning. Intestinal contents for all sorts of poisoning. Kidneys, 1 kidney. Liver, 500 to 1000 grams. Well, you have at least 500 grams to be collected. Stomach contents, 500 to 1000 grams. Urine, if available, can be collected in a different container. And how long should be storing the waste? You have sent it to a chemical examiner because Q2, even if you have the authority or the facility to do all these tests, all this forensic testing, like toxicology testing or poisoning testing, you don't have the authority to produce a result which is valid in the court of law. So we don't normally do. We just submit the samples to the chemical examiner who will be doing the chemical analysis or the toxicology analysis. So the dispatch formalities are a bit tough and very stringent when it comes to the chemical examiner. We have a lot of dispatch formalities. You have to have a proper letter to the chemical examiner. In our state of Kerala, we've got 3 chemical examiners in 3 different places. One is in the middle, that's in Cochin, another is in Trivandrum, and one is in Calicut. So we have 3 chemical examiners based on the regions where the cases are being filed. You just forward these samples to those chemical examiners. The species of the animal should be there. I think we have the formats. I just put the formats in the Word in a PDF format just for you to know what are all the contents to be there in the letter. So this is, in fact, I just cut my video again and for you to make the picture a little bigger. So this is the first letter what you have to put. This is the first covering letter. This should contain forwarding samples of dash. That means it's a dog. Don't tell it as Ricky or Riku. This is a dog's name. You tell it as dog. And later, when you in the letter, you can write. See the samples forwarded. There is one column there, and here you can write sample of a dog named this, aged this, and here you should be mentioning through this person, that is the police officer. CPO is a civil police officer. His name and his number should be there, of which police station he belongs to, that should also be there. And this person's sign should be authenticated or endorsed or countersigned by the head of office who is sending that specimen. In our case, is the Chief Disease Investigation Officer. That's the Joint Director who is the head of the office and not any other person below that. The head of the office is the person responsible to send the specimens. Probably an officer below that will be doing the necropsy. He will be preparing the report. He will be doing all other, facilitating the packing. Everything will be done by the lower staff. But the person who will be signing off this particular report will be the head of the institution or the officer in charge of the office. So this is the second, which is called as a report. This should contain the post-mortem number, the name of the deceased. Deceased means again the dog name, this reference number or the FIR number should be noted. And one more thing about the FIR, you see it, I forgot to tell you in the initial phase, once you get a letter from the sub-inspector as a request for doing a forensic post-mortem, you ask for a FIR copy. Normally FIR copy won't be ready by the time when the request is ready. But you tell that before I give you the result or before I hand over the samples for chemical analysis, you should be giving the copy of an FIR, of the FIR. Because the problem is the FIR is the document which again you have to file in your personal file. Because later at some point of time again when it's being produced in the court of law, you will have to just produce the FIR and get some details. So that is very important. But once you hand over the chemical samples to the chemical analysis to the policeman, then don't expect the FIR to come to me, it will come to you. Because already their job is done and getting the FIR is your job and your responsibility. So don't give the packed things to the chemical examiner before you get a copy of the FIR. Because tell that you have to put the FIR's number in this particular letter which is being sent to the chemical examiner. The piece of the lung, all these things should be in detail. And if you have a brief idea of the clinical history, then item number 10 indicates the clinical history known. Or you can put some parts of the FIR, like reported the animal was found dead in this particular area, supposed to be maliciously poisoned as per the FIR. Please don't tell that it's your report. You tell as reported in the FIR, these were the circumstances and these were the things. This is the background information on which I'm sending these samples. And the next would be the labels you have to stick on to these bottles. Each and every specimen should be having one separate bottle with saturated saline up to 3/4 and immerse the organ inside, and that bottle should be labeled with this particular label which should contain the name of the office, the post-mortem number, name of the disease, the specimen, the office seal, the signature. These things will be there in the label which is pasted in the container. And later on you wrap it with the brown paper or a white paper. Again you seal it with a twine, and then you have to put a red wax and put an insignia which is specific to your institution. And again above this brown wrapper, again you have to put the same label, and these labels should tally. So you keep two labels near the container and you wrap it, and finally after wrapping with the brown paper you twine it, put the red bags and put the insignia. Previously we were doing with the coins, like currency coins like 25 paise coin, you just put it on the side. That will give you a small pattern which they are objecting now, because anybody can have a 25 paise coin and put an insignia like that. So instead you should be having some sort of insignia specific to your office, or something which is unique where you won't get anywhere else. So that is the main thing what you should be doing when you finally do it. And send it to the chief chemical examiner again with a note. So all these individual bottles, all these 5 to 6 samples packed in individual bottles, and also a sample of the preservative which is used. And that means the hypertonic saline which was used. That alone, the preservative alone, again should be labeled the same way and should be put, and all these put together in a big thermocol bottle with 2 letters. This whole letter, this group of letters, that means the covering letter, the report, and the labels. All labels together taken in one page will form one set of the document. That will be put in a cover, and that will be pasted around this particular thermocol box. And another copy should be handed over to the police. The same set of copies again being signed, and all of these things should be put. And one more thing I forgot to mention: this should contain the countersign of this police officer. The police officer's name and his CPO number should be mentioned in that covering letter. I think the covering letter has got that. The CPO name and the covering see, you can see the signature of dash. Signature of the police officer, his name. Suppose if it's Joseph, signature of Joseph, civil police officer number, and the signature will come here attested by the chief. So that should be there, and this should be handed over to the police. And the chemical examiner is too fussy about all these things. Whatever slight defect in any of these procedures, the formality is not be properly followed, they summarily reject the specimen, and it is the duty of the policeman to come back again and not to hand it over to the farmer to do the rest of the work. So you have to be very careful and meticulous in packing these specimens, because we have encountered, though we have been sending samples, almost 5 to 10 samples we send to chemical examiner every month for last so many years. Still we are encountering minor problems. So take care that you are sending the proper with all these proper formalities. It's again formalities, but that has to be meticulously followed. Again, you can see me again. So the physiological changes in exhumation, you got your putrefaction changes. You have your, if the carcass is being in a moist place, you find adiposia, what you call as a grave bags, where you have these fats being esterified and putting on the outside of your body, wherein your body again regains the shape. Normally, after your rigor and after your flaccid stage, normally your body collapses and you lose your shape. But again, you're going to be very beautiful when you put in some adipose here, and that is what you call as a grave wax. Grave wax. So that happens in a moist environment, whereas you sometimes the body turns to mummy in case you find a leathery type of a feel outside the body. You have a leathery parchment type of covering outside the carcass. You call this mummy. That is mummification. So your post-necropsy procedures, don't think that after finishing the necropsy you just leave the area. It's your responsibility to decontaminate the entire environment. Decontaminating instruments is your threat, your personal threat, where the instruments are a potential threat to transmit diseases if it's not properly sterilized and cleaned. But the premises belongs to the owner. Suppose we're doing it in a laboratory or in your post-mortem hall, you don't have a problem. It's up to you whether to clean. But to be on the safer side, and as a part of your good laboratory practices, you always clean with disinfectants and clean your knives and the rest of the things with proper disinfectants before you go for the next procedure. So that is what you should be doing in a laboratory. But take care if you're doing it in a field condition. See to it that you're doing it properly. With decontamination and clean and disinfect all your work surfaces. Decontaminate. Do not discard any of the used material, any of your aprons, gloves, because that has got a potential threat of contaminating the surroundings, and probably that can have a problem and cause a human illness. Necropsy findings should be recorded then and there itself instead of waiting for. So now we start digital, digital display of all these photos. These are all our own photos taken from our institute, from our own cameras. So I would just go through some of these pictures and just give you an impression of how things were, when we were doing some forensic autopsies and other autopsies, and how you can interpret lesions. I think this would be interesting for you, for those people. I think the participants have come down, and 55 good users are there with me still. So I find it, really, happy and privileged to be still, people are following. I think you will have a very good time. Here you don't have any script or text. Further, all photos. Probably you will be faced with 3 or 4 more questions, which is very easy to answer. And let's see. I'll just break off my video screen and just make the screen a little more enlarged. Here you can see this is a part of our autopsy, which is done on a wild hog or a suscopa, your wild pig, which is bought by the forest department as a part of their surveillance work. The beat forest officers found one carcass of a wild hog in the dense forest, because these wild hogs, they just stray and they just come over in the human habitat all the time. And it's a very, supposed to be a very delicious meat. I've never gone through it. I would love to try, but bushmeat hunting and poaching is illegal. And being a responsible citizen and proponent of wildlife, I should not be doing that. But anyway, poachers are there who are readily killing those wild hogs. And here you can see this ribcage. This is the ribcage. As you can see, this sternal, the ribs are there. Here you find in the thoracic cavity frank hemorrhages, clotted blood, and extravasation of lot of blood inside the body cavity. And here these glittering pieces are just pieces of paper, which is not exactly a lesion, but just identifying signals for the lesions. I think if I can zoom it a little bit, you can see these are all small holes, which are all bullet injuries. And here you can see in this particular picture, where you can see this is the lobe of the lung and this is the heart. You can see 2 holes, perforated holes, which can never happen in an animal due to a part of the disease process. But unfortunately, with all sorts of metal detectors and all these things in hand, We couldn't trace out any bullet inside the body, but it's for sure this was the wound in the exterior, and this was a perforating wound. And you found some sort of the viscera coming outside, extruding out to the exterior, and these are typical. I think it should be something like, you know, the bullet, when it bursts, incendiary type of things, when it bursts, you know, it causes some type of splinters being thrown inside the body and causing a lot of damage to the internal organs. So a lot of holes inside, punctured holes, or, you know, perforating or gunshot holes inside the body, but there was no exit point, as we classically tell is, you know, in a gunshot you should be finding a point of entry and a point of exit, but in this case, point of entry was there for sure, and point of exit was internal organs, but nothing outside the body. So another slide, you know, this happened to be a case of a tiger which was there in Periyar Tiger Reserve, one of the prestigious for those people who are attending this lecture from outside the state. Periyar Tiger Reserve is one of the big sanctuaries we have, and one of the most prestigious projects of the NTC, National Tiger Conservation Authority. And we have a conservation project, you know, it's going on well in Periyar. And there was the death of a tiger, because this tiger was lying there, and the people saw this from a distance for at least 2 to 3 weeks. No. So people have been seeing this. Probably the animal might have been lying there sleeping, or probably the animal might have been dead by that time. But since they saw with binoculars that, you know, it's a striped animal, people know it's a tiger, and nobody has got the boldness or the courage to go near a tiger and see whether it's sleeping or it's really dead. So people just left it with that, and finally, some what it will be is not drone cameras, but some person was really good enough to see that, you know, it was not really sleeping, it was dead. And moreover, the tribal population in that particular area, just by the buzz sound of the flies, I was there attending this post-mortem, and I could hear the buzzing sound of the flies from almost a kilometer distance. Of course, I'll tell you, there are no motor vehicles and there's no automobiles there, and you don't have any disturbance. Soil, this forest is always silent, and it is not an exaggeration. It is almost 1 kilometer. We were on our foot, because we traveled by boat to a distance, and then we had to travel by foot. And within a kilometer distance, we heard the buzz sound of the flies. So the humming sound was really there. And but it was too putrefied. The carcass was so in a bad shape. But when we cut open this particular organ, I hope you know this organ. This organ, you find some fibers here. That means this is your heart part. You have some valves here. That means it's a heart. And in the endocardium, we could find some sort of hemorrhages here, but though we didn't find any vegetative growths. Normally, vegetative endocarditis can be there in old. And this tiger appears to be pretty old, around 18 to 19 years, as for the dentition, what we assess at that point of time. So there were some lesions in the endocardium. And this is another case in the Trivandrum Zoo, where there was a case of hippopotamus. It's again an old animal. Of course, you know, working with an institute like this, you know, we have a lot of opportunities to do with all sorts of animals, which we never normally, you know, we won't get any chance to do a post-mortem. But this animal, this hippopotamus, died. And here, you know, some classical lesions you find. This, again, I'll zoom in. These you can find an encapsulated bowel. There was a blockage here, and this blockage caused deposition of food here, and there was a blockage of food here. And this really caused toxemia and finally death of the animal. There you can see some cells atrophy, this fat getting gelatinized, and this animal died due to toxemia due to encapsulated bowel. So that was another good PM. And this was another small elephant calf, which was rescued from the forest. It was not rescued, it was abandoned by the herd. And it was rescued, and normally we have in the forest department, we have got some elephant camps where we rescue elephant calves and keep it in our custody, wear them. And here, in this case, we did the post-mortem, we did a system-wise post-mortem all throughout where we're doing. This animal was sick for a while, and it was listless, it was not at all having food. It had some problem in inhalation, and there was some problem in swallowing. And we did a system-wise detailed examination was done, and finally we could find some stones inside the stomach. But stones inside the stomach doesn't really cause death of an animal, but small animals probably may die. But Stones were inert and innocuous, didn't cause any tear of the mucosa, gastric mucosa, just remained like that. So we really were wondering what was the real cause of death. Finally, when we were about to close the incision and close the autopsy, finally we thought we'll just explore the anterior of the gut. We started from the esophagus, we just moved anterior. And in the proximal esophagus, we could find, you could find perforation of the esophagus caused by this lodged inside. This prickly calf had got a wise, it used to consume small gravel pieces inside, and that used to be, be inert in the stomach. But one or two gravel, which was outsized or out of proportion sized, those gravel pieces got lodged inside the esophageal mucosa, and it caused a gangrene and perforation and toxemia and final death. So that is why I tell you, even if you are not going to get any classical sensory postmortem, please don't miss any part. Don't go for a negative autopsy or an obscure autopsy. You be optimistic that you will get something out of your work. Hard work really pays. You have to be really diligent on working on it. Suppose if you're not getting on your visceral organs, again the next piece has come. Again, I introduce you to this particular thing. You can just interpret this PM change and tell me A, B, or C. I'll just open the polls for you. Please click on your screen and tell me A, B, or C. You have got a few seconds, no problem. Anyway, we are almost finishing up the session, so you can just go through A, B, or C, which is the photo, and you interpret this particular lesion. What can this be? Of course, a lot of responses coming. 54 people are still in line. I'm really glad that people are hearing this and keenly following and very eager to know what this is. 38 responses. Come on, I think you can be a bit more quick, because I think dinner is fast approaching. All are in Indian Standard Time, and we're going to be 8:30. I think 2 hours before we started. We're almost on the final steps. I think I close the poll for now. I think 39 responses of that. Majority of the responses given me bloating. Yeah, that's right then. But it is a bloated carcass. But just see the environment. I was telling you something about adipocere and mummies. Suddenly a person came for a bargain and he told 1.4, but this owner was not really ready to give at 1.4. He told 1.5. Let's be a media, but this animal succumbed the very same day. And when we inquire this animal, it is not at all this post-mortem obesity, it is not at all this adipocere or anything of that sort. It's a fresh carcass. See, we did a post-mortem, we inquired about the history. Only history what the owner could tell was the animal was very fit, animal was eating. Except for that, the animal had the dyspnea, exertional dyspnea, where the animal could not climb or could not haul timber or could not strain too much. Any sort of strenuous activity just makes the animal pant. That means the animal had a problem with the lungs. So normally the people think there's a problem with the lung, or probably your lung is not that capacitated. Not good enough to handle such sort of a strenuous work. But finally, believe it or not, that
you are now muted.
This was an abscess. This was an abscess, and this was a case of stomatic, Turkey kidneys and bottom ulcers. And this is liver of a rabbit. So probably all will be knowing liver of rabbit started with nodules or white spots or specks would be hepatic coccidiosis IMER-STD. And this is again a good picture of a liver, again from a lion which was too old. I really wonder how this lion survived so long, because you have a liver which is too fibrous or cirrhotic liver. Even without touching, I think you will be able to see the granular structure of the liver. So hard it is. It's not at all the liver type of consistency. It's so hard. They are succumb due to multiple organ failure. Whereas this liver also is also slightly hard, this part, but this part contains some yellow area. Do you call it as a bile blockage? No. Because if you have your surrounding areas also yellowish and your fat also sometimes become yellow. If your mucous membranes are yellow or your serous membrane show an yellow tinge, probably it can be an icteric effect. But this is again a fatty liver or a steatic hepatitis or a hepatosis, wherein when you cut this with your knife, a steel knife, and you put the knife into the water, you can see water, you can see droplets of water inside your knife. That means your knife has been greased by the fat inside the liver. So that is how you can easily make out a fatty liver. So I think I'll go to the next slide. So this is again the next question coming. Anybody can tell, and anybody, I keep your options open. I'll start the polls. Tell me, A, B, and C. Is it a rupture of the abdomen? You have some time to think. Don't worry. Rupture of the abdomen, colic rupture, and gastromalacia. Need to explain anything? And definitely I'll be explaining all this. I think responses, good responses. Should I be waiting for more results, for more responses? Or is it done? 38 responses was the previous one. So I expect 38 people to answer for this one also. I don't mind the 39% just pitching in for this particular answer and then again going back. Anyway, 38 responses, I think I've been followed by 38 people now. Thank you for that. So rupture of the abdomen, colic rupture, and gastromalacia. The responses was colic rupture. Of course, in elephants that is slightly confusing. It's not an IAS type of question. It's slightly confusing because colic definitely causes an infection and it causes a colonic rupture. So the colic rupture will be there, but it won't be there outside the body. That ruptures inside, and it can cause a toxemia or a peritonitis. And gastromalacia is nothing but the stomach getting ruptured, but it won't be rupturing outside. But a severe bloated carcass can rupture like this. Even it can rip apart the elephant skin. A pachyderm, which is so thick skin, can also be a victim of abdominal rupture if it is too bloated. This was a case which I happened to do a post-mortem. We didn't put an incision. Of course, you know, if I put an incision, there will be blood around. This has just ruptured out of the bloat. So it's a rupture of the abdomen. 11 responses have taken it right. 20% have given good responses. Even the colic rupture and gastromalacia, I'm not undermining or I'm telling that those people are wrong. Probably these are all small insights. I just want to tell you and differentiate between what is what. That is what I personally would like to make sure before I leave. And this is again a bird. I'll give you some clues on this. This is a bird. And here you can find the heart, and here you can find some whitish deposits in the intestinal viscera. As you can see, this heart contains whitish. It can be called as a fibrinous pericarditis, or it can be called as a chalky deposit. This is a chalky deposit which comes in a visceral gout. Visceral gout comes with the chalky deposits, not even in the internal, not only in the internal organs alone, in the intestines alone. There will be a covering, white covering around the internal organs, and also in the heart and even in the kidneys. Also, you find some sort of lesions like this. Again, this is a poultry, a 10-year-old chick having multiple nodules in the lungs and the air sacs, saucer-shaped lesions in the air sacs and lungs. I will not waste my time on this. This is aspergillosis or your pneumonia. And this is again another rupture which I was talking about, your colon rupture, wherein this is an elephant, where you find the serosal congestion. Even you find the serosa getting congested, your mesenteric vessels are totally congested, and you find rupture and full frank blood in the mucosa of the intestines. So this is again an infection of the colon and final rupture. And this is again Picture of tuberculosis in a large animal, an elephant. This is in a black-necked swan. Typical lesions, I think pathologists would be able to identify. Even people who are really good in interpreting lesions, I think I'll just zoom it a little. I'll give you some clues on this. These are all, you don't have to pull, you don't have to, at least you keep in mind, these are all diphtheritic deposits in the esophagus, can be in your intestines, and it's a duct. So that means diphtheritic deposits in the hemorrhage, the esophagus, and annular band hemorrhages, plus your gizzard muscle necrosis. All these come under the diagnosis of duct viral enteritis, otherwise what they call the duct plague. Probably, if it is in some other species like chickens, probably may not be able to. Probably it can be nutritional group even, but a large bird of this age probably may not be getting a deficiency disease. In that case, you should be suspecting something else. So I'll take it as, sorry, I jumped to the previous slide. Again, I'll take you fast to the next slide. This is again another question. You identify this part. I'll start the polls again. So please identify this part very fast, very fast. One second, yeah. Polling started? Okay, the polling has started, and 50, 45 responses have come, and most of the people have told it's 23%. 23 people have told, and 43% have told it's a semilunar valve. I think you need to zoom in to tell what it is, and some people have told it right too. So this part, I'll just zoom in. This is the heart of a crocodile. The heart of a crocodile, and this is the ventricle, and this is the auricle. This is the auricle, and crocodiles have an auricle which are well connected, and these chambers are connected by the foramen of Panizza. And normally you get confused because crocodiles won't be having any blood inside. Normally ventricles they have only the blood. And here you can see some, along with that you can see some fibrin deposits inside the, this is what is a fibrinous pericarditis. And semilunar valves will be inside. I think the most of the respondents took it as semilunar valves. But if you want to see a valve, I think if you're cutting it open, you have to go for a sagittal section to see a valve, which is placed inside the valve. Just a joke, please don't take it otherwise. I'll go to the next slide, please. So again, I have to zoom out. This is again one good picture of photosensitization in an elephant. You have elephants also photosensitized. This animal has been medicated by all sorts of things like all sorts of medication, including this herbal medication and all sorts of drugs. People just don't know what to do. People, all different practices in the state have been treating this elephant, and suddenly the animal fell sick and died. And before that, there was some sort of skin blemishes and skin being excoriated from the body, calling as photosensitization. It was told to keep it in shade, and some moisturizers and the emollients were applied on that. Just to show the picture. And this is again a gastric mucosa of an elephant, where you can see there's an erosive gastritis. You can see the whole mucosa getting eroded. So you have patches of fresh or raw looking epithelium, and this is again the epithelia or the gastric epithelia of an elephant. And here you can see pitting ulcers. These are all what you call as pitting ulcers, again due to over medication by our own people. So you are treating and you are creating something what you call as your hospital acquired or your doctor treated problems. So again, this is another elephant where you find some sort of an endocarditis and things like that in an old elephant. It's an old elephant, one of the oldest with the forest department. So it was a good tusker. So again, sorry. This is again, I just want to know how the skeletonization looks like. You have these Tusks were recovered. This was a post when this animal was killed, and these tusks were recovered. But the post-mortem didn't reveal anything of that sort, whether there was some other thing, any other specific lesion inside, because all the parenchymatous tissue and the soft tissues were all decayed. So this it's a case of skeletonization. So again, this is another oldest attempt, 81 years old. I still remember that postmortem. And there we could find these small nodules inside the mesentery, where it could be TB. There are some cycle. So these are all nodules of cauliflower-like growths. And this is again another wild elephant which was staying in the human habitat. This was listless. This is not about, it was a tusker, but it was not attacking people. It had a problem of walking. It was sick. It was not eating. Even if you people go near up to 100 meters, it's not at all attacking. So the animal was really, not well. It had problems. Finally, when we did the postmortem, we had a lot of injuries. I think I've just marked it with pieces of quick pieces just to know these are all the gore injuries which happen as a result of animals fighting, because all these male animals, they don't really have a herd to bank on. Only the matriarch will be the head of the herd, and there will be one dominant male. The dominant tusker will be the head who is doing all this, the main show. Another dominant male would really be sidelined. And a male in the forest is very hard to thrive. He'll be a lone tusker, and probably this lone tusker again came in. And this is nothing but a chicken fat cloth. I just want to show how a chicken fat cloth looks like. Whereas current jelly cloths are all dark red and they're firm, but these are all slimy, and these are all chicken fat cloth, which comes in slow death. And fast death or acute death comes with the current jelly cloth. So I just have to skip off a little fast. I think time is fast approaching. These are all signs of toxemia by 5 epicardial hemorrhages. Again, an elephant. There is a typical, I think I'll just do this for a while and then I'll just go on. And this is a case of an elephant endotropic herpes virus in elephant calves. It's a fatal disease of young calves. Juveniles up to 8 years old will get affected. Here you can see the cyanotic tongue. It's a vascular, there's an intensive vasculitis seen in all those internal organs, hemorrhagic disease. It affects the endothelium. That means all these vascular spaces will be engulfed with blood. There will be capillary bleeds inside. You can see flashes of hemorrhages inside the external of the heart. And I'll go to the next one. This is again this what animal? It's not a leopard. It's a jaguar. Jaguar, you don't have it in our forest, but it's a zoo animal. So jaguar, it had a tumor, and as you can see, it had a tumor here. This was a tumor here, and this is a postmortem finding. And again, this is a leopard. This leopard was caught in a snare. There you will find this animal which had eaten, and this leopard had a case of, and this was a specific case on this one. This was a Gallonchus infection. As you can see, this serosa started with nodules of Gallonchus species. It's again a parasite which harbors the leopards, wild ferrets. And normally Gallonchus goes like that without causing any terrible effects on the health of the animal. But a lot of studying inside the internal serosa can cause a fatal septicemia, because these Gallonchus, these parasites just produces some toxins, and that toxins get released into the blood, and that gets absorbed, and finally septicemia will result, and fatal septicemia due to a Gallonchus infection in a wild ferret. This is again an old lion in the lion safari. You can find a cirrhotic liver. It's as hard as your what do you call it? It's the palm of your hand. As you can see, the granularity of the liver. And again, it's a simian disease. It's a marmoset. It's a simian. It's probably without of simian immunodeficiency virus, which comes with facial with aberrations and all. Probably it can be a marmoset wasting disease too. It has run down in condition, so it to be diagnosed before. Because we have samples, we are just waiting for competent laboratories to make a diagnosis of this. As you can see, maggot-ridden carcasses, and this is a tiger, As you can see, if you're very close, if you go for a close-up, you can see there's some stripes. The other side, there were no stripes. You won't be able to make out which animal it is. And luckily for this side, had a few stripes, and we could make out the tiger, and nothing could be gained out of this postmortem. And again, the tiger with that sort of decayed thing. And this is another tiger in the Nayar lion safari. When we had a case of paragonymous infection in the lung, you have the lung started with paragonymous cysts, and this is the organism, and this is the parasite as such. Paragonymous, it's a fluke. And here's again a nilgai, otherwise what we call the nilgai is a ruminant. The soup wherein there was a volvulus of the intestine and got and identify the spot quick. We go to final. There's a final question and quick. This part would be. Anyway, not saying too many responses. I think that responses were there or not. Anyway, this is the cecum of the zebra. The zebra, the cecum, because the one part which projects out when you do a postmortem of a horse or a zebra would be the colon. These are all hindgut fermenters. You know that hindgut fermenters and foregut fermenters are there. Hindgut fermenters, mainly being colon fermenters, would be elephant, and the cecum fermenter would be a horse and a rabbit, and the foregut fermenter would be a ruminant, and even dogs too. So this is of course responses were there, and here you can see you can maybe 5 minutes flakes or shreds inside, which is not all, which is a chronic change, inflammatory change, and here you can see this is what Nilgiri langur, where you see some sort of pneumonia and mucosal edema, gastric mucosal edema. Here you can see electrocution. You can find these cinch marks. Here you can see the cinch marks, the burn marks, and this is a silver pheasant where you can see liver abscess. You can see those abscess inside the liver, and a pathogenic infection by staph probably. This is Procopine being run over by an automobile or a car. We had fractures. The quills were all removed, extirpated. So this was an automobile injury. And of course, this is sloth bear, where we had a tooth decay and probably this lesion should be known in the lungs, dark lungs, as a result of anthracosis, carbon deposits in the lung. And this is a tiger with against sciatic hepatitis. And at take-home points, you should be having all these lesions noted in paper, record the lesions, take photographs, refer textbooks, use a laboratory imports, and all this is the histopath information will give you more what idea about your findings. And that is something I have to tell you now, and that's all from my side. And I think it's open for interaction. We'll have an interaction for a few minutes, and I think
You are now muted.
I think I have a few questions. Should I be answering that? Or Of course, normally you don't have the liberty to deny an autopsy, but in certain conditions you can deny an autopsy if it's totally decomposed, or if a part of the animal's body is being presented for autopsy, you can very well deny, telling that you are not in a position to know the exact cause of death. Given a few parts of the body, you won't be able to finally arrive at a diagnosis. So very well you can deny the postmortem. So the judicial magistrate, another question. Judicial magistrate, of course, judicial magistrate has got the powers to give a summons, or what he calls a subpoena. And if you're not going along with the orders of the judicial magistrate as a summons or a subpoena, the next thing what comes to you would be a warrant that will give you a bit of time. So you have a judicial directive, definitely you have to oblige. So meat. No, suppose if you are going for the police is providing you what is the meat and they're telling you to identify. So probably it's not again a matter of autopsy. You have to identify the meat species. For that you have to go for some molecular methods for diagnosis. For that you have different centers like your Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology in Hyderabad. Where they have a LACONS. There's one institute, the Laboratory for Conservation of Endangered Species. They're doing meat species identification. Or else you can contact the NRC on meat research center of Hyderabad, Chandigarh for meat species identification. So these are the recognized as the statutory bodies or laboratories where we can do the meat species. But we cannot do anything with any of our organoleptic tests or chemical tests. And moreover, even if you manage to do something and tell that this is of this, it won't stand in a court of law. Anyways, I think the same doctor is being again asking me why make a team of vets of PM, two vets are enough. No, I would tell you two is better and three would definitely be enough. People, too many foods it's better to have people. And of course, for the postmortem, I'm telling you, for references and for getting inputs, you can seek the help of all experts available to you by phone or by book or WhatsApp or whatever means possible. But the postmortem side, probably two will be good. I won't prefer to have more than that. Forest department carcass without skin putrefied, so you cannot do anything. You can postmortem interval, or sometimes you will be forced to tell whether you the carcass, how for a long time you have been dead. So these type of things, these things you won't be able to appreciate with the carcass available, because putrefied carcass is not good for any of our point. Then full of maggots, can be a maggot-ridden carcass. Of course, maggot-ridden carcasses are not really good specimens for a postmortem, but you will be supposed to do that. You will be trying to, because finally when it comes to a maggot for infested body, the main area where the maggot gets infested would be the soft tissues. So and probably you won't be getting any vision from the internal organs, because it will be already eaten by maggots or be decomposed by nature or by the products. So probably in that cases, if there some test to be done with the hard tissues, you can take that. So that is why you just don't take it and tell that you just don't leave it that way and just deny and tell it that you cannot do a postmortem on a decomposed body. You should be there, but you should be having sufficient grounds. But you have not done. Your cause could not be ascertained. I have done on many decomposed bodies. Probably I will tell that I have done nothing. I will do this after this postmortem, but still I will try my luck. If I'm getting something, as I told in one of these slides, I've shown in one of the slides, wherein the whole carcass is purified, and we could luckily found some lesions in the heart, in general, for the interior of the heart, like your epicardial, your endocardium shows